Jason is his name from the UK, right?
The Scottish. Yeah, he's
Scottish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good call. All right, I actually hit record, so we're gonna start.
Okay, no problem.
At you know what? That's a good call. And then you just have to cut out the little thing at the beginning. I don't want to start the whole thing over again.
No.
Let me see his name.
I asked him flat out, like, what is for? It's just a Jason, but I forget his handle.
Me too.
It's long.
It is. It's like Scottish. Something oh gosh. There's no way to. Hang on. He would have liked this, I think. Of course, I just hit. I know. I want to give him a little shout out. Where is it? Oh my goodness. Where would he be? I'm getting like no reception down here too.
No?
Barely. And I'm not on Wi-Fi though.
Okay.
Is it Scottish? Okay, and I got it.
All right.
Wait. Scottish Bills Mafia Jason. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. We will start at the 1:30 mark.
Okay.
So you can just cut out the first 90 seconds.
Okay.
Or 10 seconds away. I think this one might be good.
All right.
I did kind of a little bit of a different twist on this one. Welcome to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo. Don, how you doing?
Good, Josh. Yourself?
We're doing great. Shout out to Scottish Bills Mafia Jason, one of our loyal followers on Twitter. Please like and subscribe this video before I forget. He suggested I gave him the choice because he loved the quarterback series and obviously the coach and GM series. Gave him the choice of the next position group that we're going to feature. And we're going to go with running backs per his request.
What if Jason would have said long snappers?
Well, Ethan Albright, Reed
we're going to do him. We're going to do him.
Sure.
He was the first guest on our show. That's a current bill.
Correct.
Reed Ferguson. Excellent.
We could Adam Langner.
Yeah.
Adam Langner is very active on Twitter. I feel like we could probably have him on the program.
Okay.
Maybe we'll try to get all the long snappers on the show. That would be interesting.
Idea.
Interesting.
Mike Schneck. Yeah. Good. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. So we're going to do this a little bit differently than some of our other series. We're not going to go chronologically. So I picked the 20 most interesting running backs from, of course, the all-time great and my favorite Bill of all time, Thurman Thomas, to today. And a little bit of poetic license. You left the team in 2017. But and most of the most interesting 20, at least on the list that I had, were from your time there. So, a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff, some anecdotes and stories about guys.
And, that's by virtue of your favorite running back, Thurman Thomas, just his longevity.
Yeah,
right?
Amazing.
During the time when we were there.
Yeah, he just felt like, and then, he stayed in Buffalo. I feel like Thurman Thomas has been in my life since I was like 10. And, he was good to me. We'll get into him later on.
Yeah.
But he's my favorite all-time Bill. And frankly, all of his stuff after his career has been just as impressive as his stuff that he's done during his career. All right, so we're going to address the elephant in the room here first. And we're going to go with O.J. Simpson. Okay.
O.J. Simpson.
We're going to put him as number 20. And, his career spanned from Bill's career from 1969 to 1977. I know you've told a couple stories on the show about the press box, about, your wife, Amy, interacting with him. He famously was in the locker room with the Bruno Mali shoes and the fourth AFC Championship game. I guess what I wanted to ask you about OJ that I don't know if we really talked about, what was the reaction in the building when you were there during the trial?
We watched it every day.
So it was acknowledged. It was what were people's feelings? Because were there people there? I mean, obviously people there knew him.
Yeah. When I say we watched it every day, we didn't watch every hour every day, but every day at lunch.
Okay.
There was a room, a scouting room. You know where it was? It was the scouting room in the old administrative building. Had a TV and kind of like a really long table. And there were 7 or 8 of us that would go there every day. I think Bob Schatz, Doug Majeski, Jackie Kosmowski, Jim Overdorf, Michelle Overdorf.
You'd eat lunch and watch the OJ trial?
Yeah.
What was the overarching theme in the building? Was it, oh my God, I can't believe he did it? No, he didn't do it. Like what do people think?
It was more the former,
okay.
But there were some people you learned very quickly. Our former trainer, Ed Abramowski.
Yeah, I remember.
Refused to believe that OJ could have.
Was he the trainer when OJ was there?
Yes.
So he knew him personally.
He knew him well, yeah.
Okay, just refused to believe it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of laughing because, the 20 most interesting, and he's number 20.
Well, we just
if by a definition of interesting, given his life, the trial of the century. No, I know what you mean. It's just like, holy cow.
We're not doing.
It's no mind
blowing.
Yeah,
what I'm actually going to do is go in reverse order of rushing yards. So we're starting kind of at the bottom, but I just figured we'd throw him out there.
Yeah,
give everybody right away.
Yeah.
And his career is what it is. Obviously, most of us were not around for it, don't remember it.
Yeah.
But I had never really gotten your take on. Do you remember watching the verdict?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Were you at One Bills Drive?
Oh yeah, right there in that room.
Okay,
we watched. It was a year. I mean, the trial was a year, and it was just Hollywood couldn't have scripted anything as intense as those moments when they read the verdict.
It was truly the trial of the century. Everybody stopped what they were doing. What was the reaction around One Bills Drive when he was found not guilty?
Really? Like,
it was during the season too, right?
It was October, November, I think. October.
Yeah.
And I mean, after hearing the trial, hearing about the DNA and everything, it was, as much as we love the guy, it was hard to think that he didn't do it. But it was hard to accept, because going back, the first time I ever met him, he was working for NBC. And of course, the Bills, I want to say it was 1990, it might have been 89, 90, 90, I think. And he was in the building, and it was a buzz, like, oh, OJ's here. And he came in the ticket office. I remember shaking his hand. He has this huge hand, like, just, he was a lot bigger than I thought. Just
okay.
I didn't realize how big he was. And then later on, I went down to the locker room to give out some tickets for the home game. And there was Jim and Bruce and Thurman and Andre. They were all getting their pictures taken with him. It was a big deal for them that he was there.
Did he carry himself? Give me somebody who, in the 90s, the Super Bowl teams, was he like Jim, Thurman? Was he on the same level? Bigger star.
Yeah, he was probably the biggest star I'd ever seen there. And our current players viewed him the same way. He was bigger than
and these
life.
Are big stars in and of themselves.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Really. Chris Berman may have been close when he came, because he was such a proponent of the team and the voice, and he was a voice in the face of ESPN. But OJ, and I think I know I told the story once on the program, but AFC Championship game, 1993. So we had the AFC champion hats on T-shirts, I think, but definitely hats. So they asked me to put them in a locker room, give them out. So it was the fourth quarter.
It was the it's like how the Red Sox, they put all the champagne and stuff out at Shea Stadium before the Bill Buckner play. So you were the guy setting up the locker room with the championship. Yeah,
we were a lot smaller back then. It was just kind of a random thing.
And the game was in hand. So it was.
That's the thing. I remember watching it from the tunnel, and when we scored to go up like
30 to 13,
it was over. There was only a few minutes left. It was like started to celebrate the way they did in 1990 for the whole second half. Remember that you talked to Daryl Talley about that. But I started to put them there, and there was like 2 minutes left in the game. I was the only one in the locker room. All of a sudden, boom, I heard the door bust open, and I hear this, woo, just screaming, yeah, heck yeah, woo. Like, I looked, it was O.J. Simpson all by himself. He didn't know I was in there.
Okay.
But it showed me, candidly, behind the scenes, just what a big Bills fan he still was.
Okay.
Did
he know you?
He knew my face.
Okay.
Yeah, he'd been around enough that he'd see me. I don't think he knew my name, but and then it was 6 months later.
That's crazy.
Went down,
That's crazy. He had the shoes on at the game, and I remember they used the pictures from that game,
right?
To pin them to the shoes, etc. So I figured we might just start there and get one of the big boys out of the way. So OJ clearly is polarizing, is still on Twitter. Doesn't refer to himself as OJ, refers to himself as yours truly. Anytime.
Does he?
Yeah. He does a couple of videos a week usually, and then always mentions the Bills. So his Bills fandom, I think, has not waned.
Interesting. Yeah. It's been 50 years since he set the NFL rushing record for 2,003 yards.
50 years.
50 exactly, right? It was 73.
73.
So
50. I'm sure the NFL's not going to have many tribute videos
it's tough. Yeah,
All right, so we're going to go in reverse order, like I said, and this guy is number 161 all time on the Bills rushing leaders.
Okay,
but I found him to make this list. He has 35 rushing yards all time. Any guess?
He's 100 and something.
61 all time.
161.
But he's not. It's kind of a trick. He's not a running back, and he's not. But he's not a quarterback either, and he's not a receiver. He's a fullback.
Frank Summers.
Sam Gash.
Oh yeah.
35 rushing yards.
That's it.
Career. His best play was a reception where he kind of bounced off a couple of guys and scored a touchdown.
I remember.
But he only had 35 rushing yards in his Bills career from 98 to 03.
And he played for other teams, but we're just talking about the Bills. I know, but still 35. I can't believe it's only 35.
That's it.
He made such an impact by doing what a fullback does.
He was a big deal. He was a big signing.
Yes, he
was.
And
I think he made the Pro Bowl as a Bill.
I believe he did.
And didn't he make it without a carry?
If he only had 35 rushing yards, it sounded like maybe he did.
He was prolific out of the backfield, like catching the ball. Like but do you remember have any memories of him, personally? Because I was there when he was there. Real chill, real cool
gentleman.
Yeah, good guy.
For what a fullback does, they just bash heads, off the field. He was just this really gentle guy. I remember he came back to the Bills after going away, playing at like Baltimore or something like that. He came back for like a year, and I remember Rusty Jones was still there as the strength coach, and he was telling the GM, whoever it was at the time, "You got to get this guy. He's available. You got to get this guy. Like he's exactly what we need."
Like a locker room leader.
Yeah, and Rusty wouldn't have normally like inserted himself in the process there, but he used his voice and his influence. I remember campaigning around the building that we needed to.
That's high praise. That's high praise of Rusty is campaigning for you, because he's gone through how many players.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Okay, so we're gonna go to number 80 on the list.
80.
Okay, another fullback, 216 rushing yards for the Bills. He was only here 2 seasons. He scored 4 touchdowns, but he's a big name, and again, I think an All-Pro. Larry Centers.
Yeah. Larry Centers was almost. It was unfortunate because we signed him as a free agent, and on a bad team. What year?
01.
Yeah, that was a bad team, and he still had a lot left in the tank. He was an excellent receiver.
Now, a guy like that. Now, I know you weren't necessarily involved yet heavily with the contract negotiations, but a guy like Larry Centers looks at the 01 Bills. Yeah. Probably realizes they're not going to be very good.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was pretty obvious. We all got let go, and it was pretty obvious that the 01 team wasn't going to be great. And he's still kind of in his prime. Does he just take the money? Like how many times did you feel like somebody just came here to take the money?
It's funny you say that, because I was just starting to get into contracts then. And there's a clause actually that you have 72 hours after a contract is inked that you can still pull out and still
like a used car.
Yeah, believe it or not, there's in the fine print, but it's enforceable. And like 2 days after he signed, somebody must have told him about the New York State taxes. He was a Texas guy, and he was like, "Wow, that's a chunk." He goes, "I got to reconsider this." And then his agent, everyone talked him into seeing, if you hit just a few of your incentives, Larry, you'll more than eclipse what New York State taxes are going to be.
So you have 72 hours. Is that for some like just a free agent coming here, or is it a contract restructure? Is it all contracts?
Yeah. It's all contracts.
Wow.
Yeah. Believe it or not, it's a seldom used or invoked clause. But
do you ever remember like a handshake deal or a verbal agreement going south?
I remember some rookie free agents on draft night verbally agreeing, and then finding out that they signed with another team, and that did not play well. The agents got blacklisted after that. If they let that happen, anyone that dealt with that agent would never let them forget it.
Wow. So agents could get blacklisted. Were there GMs like when you were there and Jim was negotiating contracts? And when you're dealing with either agents or other teams, were there guys that you just didn't trust?
Agents?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some that you just knew, even after a verbal deal was done, that they would, one more thing. Like, no more things. I told our GM we had a deal.
Right.
Like, no. Yeah, I sent the contract to the league. It's been approved. No, when you said we're done, we're done.
Were there guys that they would avoid because of the agent?
No, I don't think so, because I mean, agents did have like a code of ethics that they had to adhere to, but I don't think there was ever a player that, we're not going to go after you just because you're agent. I mean, but there were some agents you just dreaded.
Just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Just like real life. All right, the next guy on the list is I put on the list, and I don't know if you even know this. So number 65, he had 336 yards from 04 to 06. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. Shaud Williams. Now, Shaud Williams is famous for obviously playing for the Bills, being at Alabama, but also he was featured in the Ali G show. Do you remember the skit with him with Bruno?
Someone pointed it to me. I watched it, and he got tricked, right?
Yeah. So Bruno was one of the alter egos of Ali G, and he was this like Austrian, flamboyantly gay reporter, right. And he went down to Alabama as a big spoof, and something that probably wouldn't fly all that well today. But he went down there and he went to the Alabama football game and was a male cheerleader in a skit, right. And then also interviewed Shaud Williams. And you've seen the skit?
I've seen this one time, okay. And it was cringeworthy because I knew Shaud, and it was like, oh man, you're getting.
I was going to ask you, how is Shaud? Because the only time I've ever seen him speak was in that horrible interview situation. How was he as a person? I encourage anybody to go on Twitter or to go on YouTube and just look up Shaud Williams and Bruno. It's funny. I mean, it's certainly not PC, but it is funny, and you can see that he just wants to be anywhere else but in that interview at the time.
Yeah, it was tough to watch. But it's funny you mentioned speaking, because when Shaud was on the team, I remember he was the 3rd string running back. He was still getting a fair amount of carries, but he was number 3 on the depth chart when anyone was healthy. And there was a game where I wasn't in the locker room, but I heard from people that were in the locker room that we were down and just playing badly, had a half to go, obviously. And all of a sudden one voice just started to came out of nowhere. Come on, guys, we're better than this. This is just, and fire and brimstone kind of shouting and pacing around the room, and it was Shaud Williams.
Really?
And I guess like no one really knew what to do because he wasn't, a captain. He was, but for some reason he felt compelled to lend his voice. And
did you end up winning? The game?
Yeah. I heard we ended up winning the game, and so it probably emboldened him to do it more. I didn't hear that he ever did it again, but I just remember people were like, that should have probably come from someone a little more clout.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I included him because I watched that clip actually last night as I was doing this list funny. Again. And it still holds up as funny, at least to me. Number 52 on the list was there at a time. Both of us were there. And then he ended up having a pretty good career with the Patriots. 428 yards, 6 touchdowns from 2000 to 03. Sammy Morris. Sammy Morris was a really a good guy. Yeah. Someone who I enjoyed interacting with. He was big, in special teams.
Right.
So he was actually the up back on the punt cover team. One of the only guys that knew his assignments and knew what to do. Took it seriously. Like, was just a pro. One of those guys who've had, what do you have, like a 6 or 7 year career? Because then he went to the Patriots.
Did he play for Miami too?
Yeah, he did. I think he did like the tour of the AFC East, except for the Jets. Yeah. But I think he got a ring with the Patriots.
Okay.
And I remember being happy that he got a ring with the Patriots, even though we weren't rooting for the Patriots. But I was glad to see him get one because he was one of the guys on the team that was a pro's pro, and it's not surprising that he got like onto a Bill Belichick team, frankly.
Yeah, a lot of guys. Yeah, Antoine Smith, who you're probably going to bring up, did the same thing. I remember Sammy. Yeah, a real nice guy. I just remember for some reason when he went to the Dolphins, he really hurt us. I just remember he had some really big games against us.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Next on the list, I can't wait. You have to, you have to tell the story. One of my least. Now I don't say this very often. As a kid, one of my least favorite Bills. You should already know who it is. Maybe my least favorite Bill of all time. I'm disappointed that you don't already know because we've talked about him numerous times. Number 42 in all-time rushing yards, 621 yards, 10 touchdowns. He was a Bill from 1990 through 1995. You should know this. And probably my least favorite, most maddening player on the field. And then some of your off-the-field stories have made me laugh over the years. Carwell Gardner.
Oh, Carwell Gardner.
See,
yeah,
there you go. You gotta tell the story on the bus. Okay, there's two. You gotta tell the story on the bus with the wad of cash.
Yeah,
and then you gotta tell the story in the end zone in where was it, Miami?
Well, there's a third one then.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
let's go. Let's spend 5 minutes on Carwell.
I remember there was a complaint. I was reading. I had to do, every once in a while you had to take player files out, and there was a complaint that Brian Cox, who was the Bills' arch enemy in like '95, area. I mean, all the
the double bird, and
right.
I hate Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was late in the game, I think, we just needed a first down to run the clock out, and I think it was Gardner that either carried it and got like 2 yards, and or made the block. I think it was a carry. I think it was like a rare carry, and then he got in Brian Cox's face, which probably it would have been taunting today. But they got into it. They had to separate the guys, but it didn't end there. Apparently, Carwell Gardner, after he got dressed in the locker room, wasn't done. And he followed Brian Cox and went on to the Miami bus to continue the fight.
Wow. This was in Buffalo.
In Buffalo.
He went on to the Miami team bus, which were usually parked like right near the tunnel.
Yeah.
Wow. He went on the bus.
He went on the bus, and I can't imagine the scene in the bus because it was him against the world.
So
I don't know who was on.
Who filed the complaint? The Dolphins?
Yeah.
With you or with the team or the league?
The team, both. Yeah, I think he got fined.
That's beautiful. All right, well maybe he's not my least favorite player.
Oh, you gained some points there.
The other one, I don't know if I told you this one or you told me this one. I think it was the '92 AFC Championship game, and there's a clip. I think Thurman scores, and he's the lead blocker, and he scores, and Carwell leads the way. And he just grabs his crotch, right?
I think he looked for a camera first.
Yes, and he just grabs. There's always that famous play where Randy Moss scored and then went to the goalpost and kind of like wiped his ass on the goalpost. Yeah. But Carwell, do you remember that? Carwell just like two hands, just because the game at that point I think was over, and he just grabbed his crotch and just let all of NBC know.
And Joe Robbie Stadium.
Yeah. Was he around the building? What was he like?
He was. It always felt like he never left college.
Okay,
Louisville. I remember when we signed him, it was supposed to be a big deal. We had Jamie Mueller on the program, and I didn't realize that. I thought Jamie Mueller played longer than he did for some reason, and he felt bad about the way he left. I don't remember there being any bad feelings, but apparently it was just because, they thought Gardner was going to be that guy. But yeah, he was a guy that just
volatile,
loose cannon.
Didn't you tell me a story about him having a wad of cash on the team bus?
I vaguely remember that. Like he would be that guy that would just flash the cash. Every story. I remember when I interned there and I first met you, we just, time to time would talk about earlier 90s Bills, and I was just like, oh, Carwell, and your immediate reaction was just what you just kind of laughing, chuckling. How long did he play?
90 to 95.
95. Yeah, because Brian Cox was 95 was the year he
really was an important player on those Super Bowl teams. He got a lot of play. I always felt like he should never get the ball. I mean, look at all the weapons you have on offense. And I understand you're going to do some misdirection to the fullback from time to time, whatever. But he should never carry the ball. You have Thurman Thomas, you have Kenny Davis, you've got, Andre Reed, you got everybody. I mean, Carwell should never have the ball. At least it's my
should be an option way down the list. Yeah.
That Brian Cox bus story is great, though.
Yeah, he went on I was reading and I showed a few people. I was like, do you remember hearing about this? Because I didn't, but apparently it happened and it was an official.
And people probably were not surprised.
No, if anyone, who would, he would do it.
He would do it.
But why would you think that you stood a chance
against the whole team?
Against the whole team.
God.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So next on the list, ironically, number 32, 901 yards, 4 touchdowns, 87 to 90 is Jamie Mueller.
Jamie Mueller. Yeah.
So we had him on the program. Another guy who was instrumental in the success of the the AFC Championship team in '88, and then the Super Bowl team in '90.
Right.
I felt bad about the way it ended for him.
Yeah.
The way he told it. You feel like
I did too. That was a downer. But I like to think that even as he talked about his career, he kept talking about how much he loved it here, loved Buffalo, came from a small college. Benedictine. He was kind of that prototypical fullback. Like if you watch the movie The Longest Yard, the remake version of it, if they were going to cast a fullback, he would have been that guy. I think it was Stone Cold Austin.
Yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
But Jamie Mueller just had that persona.
Complete opposite of Carwell Gardner. Like if you think about just the two personalities, not that one is any better than the other, but if you were going to draw up two fullbacks, Jamie Mueller is that old school buzz cut, fullback, like you said, and then Carwell was really athletic. But just a loose cannon, like a live wire.
Yeah, and Jamie Mueller, I think, ironically, his biggest play, of course, was that 4th down against the Jets where Jim Kelly was scrambling and just threw it. Almost looks like he was going to throw it away, and Jamie Mueller made like a diving catch in the end zone last play of the game and won the game.
And Carwell's biggest play was grabbing his crotch in the end zone in 1992. That play, I'm going to put that up on Twitter. I'm going to ask our guy at Bill's VHS to find that play because it's amazing. Like he just again, amazing. All right, we're going to move on to number 30 on the list. He had 967 rushing yards for the Bills, only 2 touchdowns from 2000 to 2002. A guy who I was there for. And I feel like had a lot of potential and never put it together with Shaud Bryson.
Oh, yeah.
Tennessee.
Shaud Bryson. He was really fast.
Yes.
And not just for his size. He was just fast, period. You're right. I think he had a nasty leg break or a torn ACL one year. Came back, showed some flashes. He was kind of like, it feels like he could have been Derrick Henry.
Sure. He had some straight line speed.
Yeah.
He didn't have a lot of like wiggle, but he had a ton of straight line speed. And when he got going, like he really got going. Real quiet guy, real reserved, but just one of those players who you're like, man, what could have been for him? Because he had all the talent in the world. And I don't feel like he did anything wrong. No. Kind of some bad luck, some injury luck. The offense wasn't great in 2000, 2001. Like just one of those guys where you can see like this guy's got an elite talent and just never happened.
Exactly. Didn't he end up playing for the Lions?
Yeah.
And had some success there, but still not what you'd expect coming out. Was he 2nd round pick?
Tennessee.
Yeah, and he was
good. And those
really
those were like the T. Martin National Championship Tennessee teams. Like he had a better college career probably than an NFL career, and it's too bad.
It is, yeah,
because he had a lot of athletic talent.
Ooh, man, he could fly. Yeah.
All right,
I think he had some really big preseason games or something, if I remember. And you're like, oh yeah, there's the guy we drafted, and then it just.
So that's the running joke in my house now is so there's always like the next Jim Brown in it was Yanel Jourdain back in the 90s and then all the way to currently. I remember last year it was that guy Blackshear, and everybody in my circle was so upset when they cut him, and then he went to Carolina and had like 3 touchdowns, and of course everybody's throwing it in my face because there's always the next Jim Brown is always like the 4th running back in camp, right? Like there's always that breakout guy in camp who is playing against players who will never make the NFL.
That's right.
During the 4th quarter of the last preseason game. And he looks great, but it's like, okay, you're not going to make the squad.
It happens every year. And fans lose their minds because, well, why can't the team see what we see? But what the team sees is, the other 5 or 6 days a week when they practice, how that goes. And you were there.
Yeah. When in the competition during the last quarter of a preseason game is not, a lot of guys don't know their assignments. They're winded, they're gassed. Like you're not playing against NFL players at that point. So the preseason running back all-star is a staple. And so Shaud Bryson was one of those, but clearly had the talent if he could have put it all together.
Yeah, he was better than that. But you're right, didn't reach it.
Number 29 on our list has been a story on our program many times, a topic of conversation. 1986 to 1989, 968 yards, 3 touchdowns, and one of the most famous plays in Bills history, Ronnie Harmon.
Yeah.
So we've talked about, that play in depth. We've talked about it numerous times in Cleveland. Do you have any other memories of him? Do you remember how he he left the team after that play, right?
Yeah, he left the team. He went to the Chargers after that. It's too bad because he made spectacular catches. I remember, he didn't hold the ball the traditional way. He held it like a loaf of bread, and he was real flashy and a highlight reel kind of player. Remember, he came out of Iowa, and he was there with Thurman for a year, And that drop, some people just casually call it a drop, or Daryl Talley came to his defense when he was on our program.
And
that wasn't a drop.
And Daryl shoots straight. Daryl's going to give it to you, the way he truly feels. So he's never going to BS you.
Yeah, he said he was coming down already and running out of real estate, and I forget how he defended it.
It's a tough last play in your career, and ironically, when we talked to Lee Evans had a famous drop in the AFC Championship game with the Ravens, and that was the last play of his NFL career.
Was it?
It was the last play of his NFL career, which is doubly tough. But Ronnie Harmon's last play as a Bill was a dropped end zone.
And he went to the Chargers. He had a lot of success there, though, if I recall.
I remember rooting against him. As a 14, 15-year-old, I was a little bitter. Number 28 on the list, another guy. When I was there, kind of the three-headed running back committee after Thurman left was Sean Bryson, Sammy Morris, and Jonathan Linton, who has actually surprised me that he had 1,002 yards and 6 touchdowns for the Bills from 98 to 2000.
Did he?
I would have thought Sammy Morris had more rushing yards as a Bill than Linton. Okay. I remember Joe Pendry didn't like Jonathan Linton.
No.
He was just starting running back, but he didn't like him.
Was he more like a fullback or
yeah, he was kind of a hybrid. All three of those guys were like bigger, thicker.
Yep.
Joe Pendry had this type, and that's why he didn't want Thurman anymore. So he had like this type that was kind of
good thinking.
Yeah, it was great. Right. Well, it worked out real well. But yeah, just this combo running back, fullback, one back set, because we ran a lot of one back. Yep. And I don't know. He was just kind of vanilla.
I remember he made a big catch, a game-winning catch when Flutie was there, right?
Yes, against Baltimore.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, in an ugly game.
It was in the rain.
It was like 13-10 or 10-7.
It feels like every time the Bills have played in Baltimore, including last year, it's just always raining.
Yeah.
Like every time they play in Baltimore, Flutie made like one just enough plays.
Scramble.
And Linton had the touchdown in the end. So that was his high water mark as well. I was actually surprised that he was number 28 on the list. I would have said, much less.
I am too.
Next guy here, who obviously has an incredible family story. He had 1,707 yards, 10 touchdowns from 95 to 98. Derek Holmes.
Yeah, Derek Holmes was one of the most exciting players that came around. I think, was he a 7th round pick or something?
I believe so.
Yeah, and his brother was killed.
No, his brother's in jail.
Okay. I knew there was a family tragedy involving his brother, but I want to say, when you talk about his family, there was some other unfortunate death somewhere in there that like they did a personal profile piece on him. He was in prison.
He was one of those guys. He was one of those players where anytime the Bills played and he made a play, you would always hear the story. It's like how Chris Hogan played lacrosse. Yeah. It's like how Ray Bentley wrote Darby the Dinosaur. Yeah. It was always Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. There's that trope, because when you're playing the other team, the announcers are going to always bring up those like little personal anecdotes.
We did our homework
about Ryan. Yeah. So Derek Holmes was exciting though. Like Derek Holmes in the open field was something to watch.
He had a peculiar running style.
Yes. His arms were all he was like winding up almost. Absolutely.
Yeah. But he was a pleasant surprise. Like he was always had this big play ability, and it kind of, unlike Sean Bryson, you expected a lot more of
Sean Bryson,
Derek Holmes of that,
Correct.
What I mean? But
he for a little while there, it felt like he was kind of being groomed to be Thurman's replacement.
Yeah, 96. Thurman still had plenty left in the tank. He was in the back half of his career, obviously. But Holmes, I don't know. He didn't last more than a few years, and then did he go to Indy maybe?
Yeah, running backs other than Thurman are 3-4 years and then gone. And he replaced Kenny Davis as Thurman's like primary backup. Yeah, touchdown stealer in fantasy football.
Yeah, a little diversion here, because there's a lot of NFL news about running backs. Like the top running backs have been getting together the past few days to talk about how they can get bigger second contracts. Barkley and Henry and Eckler and those guys. And the game has changed. It's become more of a passing game. But I think I get frustrated, and it's my own fault. And I guess I'll blame Thurman for just being so good for so long. And like, if this team had a Thurman Thomas that number one, just could run the ball so well, pick up blitzes, but catch the ball. He's just, I know we're not talking about him yet, but it seems like he's the gold standard. OJ, not pertaining to Thurman, is the gold standard from what we watched and what we were around. But they just don't make them like that anymore. Weapons that are
there's very few
all-purpose backs.
Correct. Saquon Barkley is probably the closest. He's a little quicker than Thurman was, but I mean the game has clearly changed as well. And then and analytics has devalued the running back position, and more quarterbacks run now.
True.
Whereas in the 80s and 90s, a lot of quarterbacks didn't run at all.
Yeah.
You certainly didn't want them to run.
Yeah, like Randall Cunningham was an anomaly. He was like, he's the running quarterback. There weren't moving. Yeah,
there weren't many.
No.
So no, that you're absolutely right. And the idea that Thurman would always he had capable backups his entire career.
Yeah, he did.
To go from Ronnie Harmon to Kenny Davis to Derek Holmes. Yep. Pretty good.
Credit Bill Polian and John Butler for finding those compliments. Yeah.
Speaking of that, number 16 on the list, 2,460 yards, 23 touchdowns, which I feel is a little high. I think he bogarted quite a few of Thurman's touchdowns. Would be Kenny Davis.
Yeah.
89-94. The idea that he has 23 touchdowns, a lot of them were 1-yard touchdowns where Thurman did all the work to get to the one.
He did the dive.
Yes, he had the dive from like the 3.
Yeah.
And he was real good. Him and Don Smith.
Don Smith, yeah.
What do you remember about Kenny Davis?
The Texas Twister, they called him, and probably one of Bill Polian's best signings. It was Plan B at the time, and he came in. He was always smiling. You remember him? You were out. He was always smiling, and I remember when we went to Germany in '93. He and I were like the two people that brought video cameras. I remember he had one. I don't know why I remember that. Sometimes when I look at the videos, I see him with a video camera. But
do you feel like he ever wanted to be a starting running back? Not with the Bills, clearly, but
I think they all do. But if I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I feel like if you would have said, okay, you're not going to be a starting running back, but if there's a situation in the NFL where you could be on a team where you'd have the most value, it would be what he did with the Bills.
Sure.
And from my memory of him, of those 23 touchdowns, those are regular season, I take it.
Yes.
But man, he came up big in playoff games.
He was the main guy in the comeback.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of big plays there because Thurman didn't play.
Right.
So no, he has an outsized role in Bills history for being only a quote unquote backup running back.
Is he the best backup in Bills history of any position?
No, Frank Reich.
Fair enough.
But he's probably second.
Could be. Yeah.
Because Frank Reich is probably the obvious answer. But Kenny Davis did it more often than Frank.
Yeah.
Like he played every game. Like Frank's contributions when he played were enormous. But Kenny Davis played every game. Frank didn't.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting debate. I like overall, Frank's highs were higher than Kenny. Frank's highs as a backup were as good as anybody ever.
True.
But Kenny Davis, helped the team win a lot of games.
Yeah, I think I've heard Thurman say that he credits his longevity in a large part to Kenny Davis and what he was able to do when he spelled him.
Sure, and he took a lot of the, like the high impact carries at the goal line.
Yeah,
he'd have been a nightmare. Thurman, fantasy football wasn't nearly as big in the 90s. People would have hated Kenny Davis. Just take all the touchdowns. It's one of those guys where Thurman will get you to the 2, and then here comes the touchdown stealer.
Well, Thurman still made the Hall of Fame.
He did quite well.
Yeah.
Did quite well. All right, number 15 on the list, and surprised me how few yards he had. 2,765, only 17 touchdowns from 2007 to 2010. Outsized personality, somebody I'd love to talk to on the show sometime. Marshawn Lynch. 15th all-time in Bills rushing yard history. I feel like that's a huge fail. Why did he leave?
Why did he leave? You talked about a 3-headed monster before. There was a 3-headed monster, I think, when the team drafted C.J. Spiller. That was Buddy Nix's first pick. And I'm sure Marshawn was going to like why? What? Fred Jackson, who was very close with Marshawn, was maybe a perfect example of, Fred complimenting Marshawn. I don't think anyone ever would admit that they knew Fred was going to be that good.
Sure.
But he just wasn't happy. Marshawn held out. CJ Spiller was the future when Marshawn obviously had a lot left in the tank.
Did anybody question the CJ Spiller pick inside the building? And we'll get to CJ because he's on this list coming up in a couple. But man, when you got Fred Jackson and you invested a first round pick in Marshawn.
Yep.
And Marshawn was, it just feels like that to me is one of like the most questionable picks in Bills history.
Well, we talked about Sammy Watkins last time, and you made the point that at Clemson you just couldn't argue that Watkins was tremendous, but at what cost? This is pretty similar. I mean, when you have CJ Spiller, it isn't necessarily what cost. You didn't give up a draft pick for him, but it didn't seem like it was a position need at all.
I remember not following the team all that closely, then being shocked. And you basically traded, CJ Spiller for Marshawn Lynch. So not only did you use your first round pick on a running back, but you also lost what was basically your starting running back because there was no way there wasn't enough balls for all three of them.
No, and I remember Marshawn was holding out, and it was during minicamp, not training camp, and he wasn't holding out. He kind of did what Diggs did here, but he ended up coming to like one day of the mandatory minicamp, and no one knew whether or not he'd been staying in shape or not. It was a new coaching staff. They had never met him. And there was a coach named Darryl Day who was the assistant to Chan Gailey. And I remember he came up after practice, the one practice Marshawn had, and he's like, he'd been in football his whole life. He'd been a head coach in college. And he was like, wow, that is a special talent. He goes, I see what the big deal is about him. And then, of course, he got traded to Seattle and had that incredible run, including that one run that's one of the greatest runs of all time, probably.
Was it tough to watch him have that success there?
I guess in retrospect, because here's the thing, CJ Spiller did have a breakout season in 2000, I want to say 11 or 12. It took him a little while to get going, but all of a sudden he had like a Pro Bowl season of his own. He had, I forget how many yards, but you're like, wow, here's our game breaker. But then his career kind of ended more quickly than, I don't know if we're supposed to be talking about him.
That's fine. He's two on the list. Yeah. No, this is perfectly fine because they're intertwined.
Sure.
Their careers are intertwined. And I think anybody listening to this will always kind of associate Marshawn Lynch and CJ Spiller just because of, the draft choice. Was Marshawn, there's always those stories about him. And tell me, off the field, like what was part of it reputation? Did they want to get rid of him?
No, it was a new regime. They wanted to give him a chance. They had heard what happened, but when he first came in, I was responsible for arranging housing for rookies.
Okay.
And, the owners would always say, we're privileged to have your rookies, but just make sure.
The owners of the housing?
of the housing, of the apartments. But, please understand, no loud music, kind of a curfew at 11 o'clock. If they get together another, if they play cards, just keep it down, keep the music down. We don't want to get complaints.
So the rookies, did they live like in an apartment complex?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all of them in like one building, kind of different apartments?
Different buildings, but all in the same complex. And the reason we did it is because prior to that, they would share a hotel room for a month.
Ugh.
Yeah.
No.
7 weeks, I think. 7 weeks. So we decided, we're going to give them their own rooms.
Sure.
And they apprecited it.
So was Marshawn a troubling tenant?
Yeah.
Okay. Loud music. Other things.
And it was just how he rolled. I mean, he liked his loud music. Because he was a first round pick, and he signed his contract fairly early. Like he bought a car and, he had the loud music.
He clearly has a big personality,
right? And
you probably knew when he was in a room. Was he pleasant? Like what were your interactions with him?
My interactions with him, it took a while. He didn't really like trust me or trust like we would present him with some papers, kind of like with Bledsoe, but hey, you need to sign this so that you can get paid, and you have to sign this and that, and standard stuff. And he would look at it like, I don't know, what's this thing all about? I got to call my agent first. I'm like, Marshawn, everyone signs this. Don't worry about it, please. We want you to get paid. I don't know, man. I don't know. And all right. And then I bring it up, and I'm like, he doesn't want to sign it yet. He wants to send it to his agent. I'm like, why? Fine, let him just send it to his agent. The agent's going to see him and be like, yeah, sign it.
Was he a good enough talent to be kind of treated differently around the building? Were there different rules? Because there's different rules for different players. We've talked about it many times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was maybe some discipline that probably would have been applied to others. Instead, he just got some stern talkings to behind closed doors. He ended up being a really good guy. I know there was the stuff about how he didn't think there was enough to do in Buffalo. But
you never went to Applebee's with him?
No, I never went to Applebee's with him, but I did feel like, he was a guy from Oakland, and our player engagement director, Paul Lancaster, he just tried to help him acclimate to Buffalo. People
forget that these guys are young, they're kids, and going from Oakland to Buffalo,
right,
like is a quite a difference. And we're not talking about the weather, we're not talking about, but just culturally. What a huge difference. You're going from Oakland, California to Orchard Park.
Yeah,
which is Applebee's and Montana Grill and Mile Strip Road and the McKinley Mall,
and that's where the apartments were.
Yeah, that's why. Yes, there's nothing to do.
So he had a car, and he preferred to spend time downtown, and of course he had his issues down there too.
Sure, but you can imagine if he was a big deal in college,
huge,
big man on campus, and then you're getting stuck in a little apartment in Orchard Park, which is just the most bland. I mean, it's nice, but it's bland,
right?
And it's dull.
Another funny thing too is for the road games, we would issue the players and staff cash per diem. You might remember that. Mm-hmm. So they were all in an envelope that had their name on it, and it helped us know too who was still yet to come or not. And it was like $45 at the time Marshawn was there, and I always used to give him his envelope, and he would always kiss it. He'd be like, like it's only $45.
Are you surprised that he's such a media presence now, or no?
I am.
You are?
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
Yeah, because he had this rough persona when he was in Buffalo. It was kind of like a fighting attitude, and I'm glad to see that there's the side of him that's coming out.
He's really enjoyable.
He is.
I find him very entertaining.
I'm surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
There's one of your missions. We're gonna get him on the show.
I would love to.
You're gonna reach out to Marshawn,
right.
and I'm gonna task you with that. So we're gonna knock Marshawn and CJ Spiller off the list. CJ Spiller was 9th all time in Bills rushing. Okay. We've got like 6 to go here. We've been going for 45 minutes. Hopefully everybody's enjoying this. They like and subscribe. I think we're just going to blast through these and make it one episode. We skipped over number 13, Antoine Smith. We talked about him a little earlier. Super Bowl champion with the Patriots.
Real quick, I remember when we drafted him, we had a coach, Chuck Lester, and he goes, because we drafted Jamie Nails too. He goes, we got the hammer and the nails, and the nails. Like, I don't know who thought of it, but
Chuck Lester was the king of corny dad jokes. Right. There were quite a few of them from him. And he would repeat them over and over and over again in the office.
That's one I remember.
That is funny. He had 26 touchdowns, 97 to 2000. He was drafted to be Thurman Thomas's replacement.
He was, without question. Yeah. And they had 1 or 2 years together, maybe at least one.
97, 98, 99.
Oh, 3.
3 years together. And then he was there in 2000 and then left. And to go to the Patriots and then to go win the Super Bowl with the Patriots. Another first-round running back draft pick. Like, my God.
I know. It was a different era.
Well, it also speaks to we talked about this in the quarterback and the receiver episode. Way too many running backs first round. Like, you don't win that way.
No. You could only go so far.
Right.
And again, here we go with Thurman Thomas again. They aren't all-purpose weapons like him. In the history of the league, there are so few.
Right.
Marshall Faulk and
Barry Sanders was
Barry Sanders and like Roger Craig. One hand, and those are the guys. Is Craig in the Hall of Fame? I don't even know.
Yes, that's why Thurman's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 4 more to go to Thurman Thomas. Okay. Number 8 on the list. Another one, and this one I'm curious. I need the story of draft day. 3,365 yards, drafted first overall in 2004, 24 touchdowns for the Bills, Willis McGahee. Were you in the room when
I was in the room?
Okay, tell us, just walk us through the decision making to take the guy with the catastrophic knee injury.
Yep, everyone saw it. It was one of the worst injuries. It was, Theismann-esque. It happened during a bowl game, right? Everyone saw it, and but he was a special talent, as they say. But draft room, Tom Donahoe, Tom Modrak, they wanted him, and Mr. Wilson didn't. And it's not like he didn't realize he was a good player. Mr. Wilson actually, believe it or not, there was some crazy good kicker from Ohio State.
Yeah, Mike Nugent.
Yeah, he had his eye on him, and I remember it got real contentious in the room.
You had to take him first round.
I don't know if it's first round or second round or something in that mix. And I remember Tom Donahoe looked at Mr. Wilson and said, "I don't trade up for kickers." And I'm like, "You just said that to the owner." And we all heard it, and it was really uncomfortable. And Mr. Wilson's like threw his pen down. Okay, so we're still on the clock. And the clock's a real thing, by the way.
Yeah.
You see it on ESPN. There's no wiggle room. You can't be a second over. And we're like, who saw McGahee? And a few guys did. Who saw him the most? It was Tom Gibbons.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy, get up here. And so in front of the whole room, Tom quickly, what your impressions of McGahee? And I remember Tom, the whole room was hanging like, how's this going to play out? And he's like, he has no weaknesses. And other than
the health,
the knee, and they ended up taking him. And
were you surprised?
I was surprised because everyone knew he couldn't play the first year. There was like holding out hope that maybe, at the very end of the year. But then we're like, what's his contract going to look like? Because, how and why should he be compensated for year one when he's not going to contribute?
Was it a standard rookie deal?
No. I mean, the base of it was, but Jim Overdorf was pulling his hair out with the agent because the agent wanted it to be,
Was it Drew Rosenhaus? Because he's a Miami guy.
Yeah. And, but there had to be some concession for him not playing in the first year. But if he conceded to that, then all the other contracts around it would be out of whack.
Right.
So it was a big problem. And but the thing is,
you took him though.
Yeah, we took him. Yeah,
knowing that this was.
Right.
If I'm the agent, I'm like, hey, you took him there.
And the thing is, there was no pressure to get him in for camp.
Oh, right. That's true.
Oh no, your camp's coming up. Okay, well, you can't play anyway. I mean, you want him to be around.
Feels like another vanity pick.
Yeah. I mean, it was obviously a long-term pick, and he did have a few good years. I forget, his stats are.
Yeah, he's 8th overall in Bills history rushing.
Yeah.
I would have thought he was lower. I guess I didn't realize that he amassed that many yards.
Yeah.
Number 6 on the list it was a guy that was there at the end of your career. 3,814 yards, 25 touchdowns from 2015 to 18. My buddy Pat, who's a friend of the show, hates the fact that this guy got 2 Super Bowl rings when he really didn't contribute to either Kansas City or Tampa. LeSean McCoy. What do you? Big personality, big deal when he came here. He's kind of linked with Rex. Like, what were your interactions with him?
He was real pleasant, real happy-go-lucky guy. I remember we were in London, and it was the day before the game, and we were. I had all the passports, and we were getting everyone's luggage that had to go in advance and be screened. And all of a sudden, there was some player, and LeSean McCoy was going around the hotel with these sneakers with the rollerblades in the bottom.
Yeah,
they were new at the time.
I know.
Yeah, he was just like cruising. Like
he was doing that.
He was. Yeah, and like, please don't trip. But then all of a sudden, he overheard one player saying, because we had the bye week the next week, "Oh, I'm going to stay. I'm going to go to Ireland." And he's like, I forget who it was, but, "Oh, you're going to stay?" He goes, "I'll stay too." Like spontaneously.
Stayed for the week?
Yeah, he stayed. So like, all right, here's your passport back. I gave him his passport. But I also remember we were in, I want to say Cincinnati, and I was already in the locker room in the fourth quarter getting changed to go out to the buses. And he had fallen on his hand and dislocated his finger, and cartilage got stuck in there, so like it wouldn't go back into place.
Okay.
Very, very rare injury, but it happened to me when I was in grade school.
No kidding.
You see the scar there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I had to have incision, 3 different, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? It was just, and it wouldn't go back in. So they had to put me under, cut it open and remove the cartilage and put it back in. It's very, very rare. So I remember I told him, I said, oh man, I had that happen when I was in grade school. And he goes, oh, how'd you do it? And I said, well, I was playing dodgeball, which is true.
Yeah.
Some kid busted out a basketball and he threw real hard and it just hit right there. And there were guys that were laughing so hard that's how it happened. I can't help it.
You opened yourself up for that one.
Yeah, but I mean,
you can see it,
right?
You can see it.
But hey, it seemed irrelevant to me how it happened, but it happened and it hurt. I didn't have professional trainers to help take care of the pain until he had surgery. He wasn't going to have surgery till the next day. But I'm like, yeah.
Did he carry himself as a big deal?
Yeah. He had swagger.
And he was a big, he was a big, he was a huge signing,
a
lot of fanfare. Was he kind of the biggest personality on those 2 Rex years teams?
Yeah, I would say he was like Rex would be as a player. Yeah, he gave me a hard time too because I did the seating chart. And Rex had the top players with the most seniority, NFL seniority sit in first class. And McCoy LeSean was right on the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So so I would always tell him there was a stairs up to the plane. And if you made a left, that was first class and everyone else had an assigned seat to the right. But I never wanted to have anyone go up and make a left and find out that they didn't have a seat and have to make that walk of shame back. So during the week, I would tell him whether he had to make a left or right in the plane.
You kept signing some veteran guy who had more experience than him.
And so he said, hey, where am I sitting this week? I said, you're up. And he goes, what happens when Jerome Felton comes back? And I'm like, I don't know anything about Jerome Felton coming back. Sure enough, 2 days later, we signed Jerome Felton, who had more security. And he's like, I'm telling you, we're signing him. And I'm like, how did he know before me? So
LeSean had more juice than you,
He knew something happened in that running back's room where he was like, he must have said, hey, get me my fullback back or something like that.
So Jerome got the first class seat, right?
Yeah. And McCoy had to go. But at least he knew. It's more about knowing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right. We got 3 left here. And obviously we've talked quite a bit about Thurman already. Number 5 on the list. I think people are going to want to hear maybe your take on this guy. 3,849 yards, 27 touchdowns from 01 to 04. The infamous Travis Henry. Okay.
Yeah.
So, say whatever you would like. Don't say whatever you don't want to say. Obviously, Travis Henry is a very well-known character around Western New York. There are still Travis Henry jokes going around. So just give us
little Travis Henrys.
There are probably many Travis Henrys. Just give us your impressions or memories of Travis.
The first time I ever met him, he was coming in as was he a second round pick too? I think.
I believe so.
Yeah, and a friend of mine, Paul McDonald, who was on this program, we talked about the Super Bowl, had told me, "Hey, you just drafted Travis Henry. We went to the same high school. I was there at different times, but it's a very, very small high school. I played quarterback, Frostproof, Florida."
Okay.
And he's like, when you see him, are you going to see him? I said, I'll see him on his first day here because we put all these papers in front of him, and I was part of that group. And he said, tell him that you have a friend that went to Frostproof. I'm like, sounds good. Yeah, all right. So Travis Henry sits down across the table. Hey, Travis, and make some small talk. A friend of mine, Paul McDonald, wanted to say hi and let you know that, he's a Frostproof high school, and he just just kind of grunted and didn't say a thing. And so Paul called me later. Hey, did you get a chance to tell? And I said, how'd it go? Hey, what do you say? I was like, he's grunted. Sorry, Paul. I didn't get the reaction we were going for.
Did you know at that point that this was going to be a difficult person to deal with?
No. Oh, well, I mean, I knew he didn't sound like he was going to be talkative. I mean, bad start. And then we were playing basketball across the street. It ended, I think we talked about this, and I remember he played, and I was guarding somebody, trying to guard him one-on-one, and I turned, and I ran into a Travis Henry pick, and he was a rock. He didn't move, and I think it was even worse than that. If I could see it on film, There's no film. But you know how like when a running back is picking up a blitz,
leans
and they plant themselves and just Thurman.
Do you think he gave you a little extra juice?
Oh, he had to have, because my chest felt like my ribs.
So you're kind of in this. You're in this. There's probably some players that just don't like. Not Don Purdy personally.
I know what you mean.
But you are.
Well, maybe
you are.
I represent.
You're a suit.
The establishment.
Correct. And you had enough interaction with these guys that they knew your face, they knew your name. You probably wanted them to sign something, or you were kind of a pain in the ass, not to them, and Bledsoe and all these guys who were just like, oh God, not this guy again. What does he want?
Exactly.
So it's interesting how there were probably just a section of players from all different positions, all different from every different walk of society who just saw you as the embodiment of pain in the ass.
Well, there's a range of that, and he was on the range that didn't like to be on as a recipient of. But there was plenty of that, and there were guys earn their trust. Hey, I'm not. I'm here to help you.
Did you ever have to deal with any of his off the field issues?
No, but we hired Liz Malmstrom to be our first HR coordinator.
Just for him?
She probably should have had an assistant.
Just for him.
He was, let's just say, a disproportionate amount of work.
Wow.
And I knew generally what it was about, but I didn't involve myself. There was a kind of, lack of a better term, attorney-client privilege where that stuff stayed with her, and but I mean, it had to go to payroll. Because
it was well known in the building, though, right?
Well, yeah, but I had to know because when he got his paycheck, there were deductions for
many
child support,
many deductions. Was he the most egregious deduction person in your 20 years there?
He was up there. As a player, though, we haven't talked about that. He was a beast. He played on a broken leg. Now they say it wasn't weight bearing, but still, like he was a gamer. Like, and then he went to Tennessee and shredded us after that.
Did they want him to go? Like, did the off the field issues have anything to do with him?
They didn't help him.
They didn't help him.
No.
Is he just kind of disliked?
He was an enigma. He couldn't really break through in any personal way.
Gotcha.
To him.
It's going to happen. So it's funny that we go from him to the number 3 running back all time, who's the exact opposite of Travis Henry. And I know somebody who's a favorite of yours, somebody who I would love to talk to and have on the program sometime soon. He had 5,646 yards as running back, 30 touchdowns from 2007 to 2014, Fred Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
So you couldn't really get any more opposite than Fred Jackson and Travis Henry, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I've talked to Fred a little bit. We got to work out a time. I think we'll be talking to him here at some point. But I mean, what a story. It just, and then, Marv as a GM doesn't get many accolades. His time there it was a different role as a GM, but he said there's this guy in NFL Europe that went to College where I went. Take a look at him. Let's just at least put him on the practice squad, and like the rest is history. Came in as almost a favor, and Fred was like, "Who is this guy?" And one of the weirdest things I'd like to ask Fred if we get him on the program, I've been around sports my whole life. You've been around sports, and you watch people, and you just one of the things I noticed about Fred on the field that always amazed me was every time he fell, whether he was tackled or tripped or whatever, would fall like so gracefully.
The anti-Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Like he finds a way to go with it and pop up and go right back. And
Doug Flutie was like that.
True.
Doug Flutie never took a big hit, and even when he got hit, it looked like he wanted to be that way and land that way. You know how to fall. Yeah,
you know how to fall to preserve yourself, and it's just unbelievable athleticism. And you talk about smarts in the playoff game against game against the Patriots in 11 to go 3-0. He took the dump pass over the middle and went down at like the 2-yard line, and then Ryan Lindell actually admitted to us that there was part of him that was hoping Fred would score.
Right, yeah.
But no, it worked out better, and Lindell hit the chip shot. But I think it was 2015, the opening day against the Bears. And, Fred took it around the corner toward the end zone and had one of – look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it as a Bills fan. Just one of the wickedest stiff arms you'll ever see to a safety. I remember whoa! He was hanging on for his career at that point, in 2015.
Was he is he the most beloved Bill of the drought era?
Oh boy, he's on the Mount Rushmore.
It's him, it's Kyle Williams, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And
I'll throw up Eric Wood I have a good relationship with him. I just texted him yesterday about something. He was going on the radio. I gave him a little info, but he didn't have a chance to use it, but that's okay.
I feel like Freddie is just beloved.
Yeah, he is. He is. He is. Such a story, but he was really good to people. Aaron Williams was a safety that we had that he kind of from Texas that he took under his wing, almost like his little brother. They would go to the Halloween parties dressed as a duo, whether it was, Fred Flintstone and Barney or famous duos, and just didn't have a bad bone in his body. Great guy. I love Fred.
Well, hopefully he's another one for you to get. That's on your training camp list here for 2023.
Okay.
So clearly, number one on the list. We've talked about him throughout the episode, which is kind of neat because there's, what else are you going to say about Thurman? Do you have, to wrap this up? Do you have one memory of Thurman, off the field? One interaction you had with him. I know you weren't in the role of director of football admin when he was there, but you clearly had spent many years in the building with Thurman.
Yeah. First of all, he was the gold standard. Say what you want about O.J. Simpson and the rushing yards or whatever, but Thurman, like you said, your favorite player. He's so special in terms of his versatility. Thurman's a good guy. In the building, he had a chip on his shoulder in a good way. He hated to lose. He carried that around famously in '89. He was called out Jim, and they, of course, were best friends after that. But I just there are too many to like. My interactions with him were always really good, and I just as a player, he was the best. He was the best. With the football in his hands. Yeah,
he was the best. I remember him going off the field in Tennessee. He got hurt right before the Music City Miracle play. And that was his last series and last carry as a Bill. Oh. And it's too bad because you wanted to see those guys get one more game, one more playoff run. Sure. And he walked off the field and we were winning because he got dinged up and he was walking off the field into the tunnel. And I remember thinking, we're gonna need you next week, and we didn't need him next week. Oh. And then he went to the Dolphins for that year that nobody ever wants to talk about or acknowledge, or it was just weird. It was unfortunate, and I think there was some bitterness there for a little while, not long, and clearly we're well past that. But you see every once in a while something will pop up on Twitter with Thurman Thomas in a Dolphins uniform, and it's just like it's kind of gross. It's just kind of gross to look at and to see, and it's just like it's like Hulk Hogan is a bad guy. It's just like man, you don't talk about those times because it's tough to listen to.
I'm glad you got a chance to work with him when you were there.
He was the best, and his nickname, of course, Squatty. Yeah, everybody called him Squatty. In the locker room, like nobody called him Thurman. Everybody called him Squatty.
Yep. Joe Ferran, who was the son of Jerry and June Ferran, who I broke into the league with, was good friends with Thurman, and he always called him that. And I'm just like, Squatty. Is it okay you call him that?
Yeah.
Like, we're friends.
I never heard anybody call him Thurman.
Right.
Everybody called him Squatty.
Yeah.
So we're gonna leave it there. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this. We did a little bit over an hour here on the running backs. Yeah, and we're gonna have kind of a fun thing next week where we're gonna talk to one or two former Bills tight ends. And we're gonna talk about Dalton Kincaid and kind of the evolution of the tight end position and what he's walking into and what he might do for the team. I know, Eric Turner of Cover One did a feature with Sal Capaccio talking about what Dalton's role in the offense could be. We thought we just might do a little bit of a different take where we bring in some former guys and just talk about how much the tight end position has changed. Sure. From a guy like Pete Metzelar's to today, like Dalton Kincaid's probably not going to be inline blocking very much at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Eric Turner's done his homework on the trending of the tight end. I think, but to the extent that it's still that hybrid position of, blocking, catching, blocking. I'm sure obviously Kincaid's being brought in to be more of a catcher. I think that's safe to say, but you still got to block, you still got to line up there. And it's going to be fun to talk to some of these former tight ends and say, hey, I'm flat out ask them after we talk about their own careers, what advice do you have for him in terms of transitioning as quickly as possible? Because this fan base is looking for things from Kincaid like this year.
And it's a difficult position to begin with. It's a hybrid role.
Yeah.
So we'll see everybody. We'll see everybody soon. Thanks a lot. Right.